Okay, awesome. I've just invited our next speaker to the stage. So at the moment, this next workshop and our last workshop of the week is on one-click VIDs with Magic. Hi, Srinjoy. How are you?
Great, how are you?
I'm not too bad myself. My audio is not going through my AirPods. How bizarre. Um, not to worry though, all good. Yeah, so good to see everyone again in the chat. Hi, GMGM. Um, yeah, Srinjoy, you're gonna yeah, talk to us today. Um, obviously, gosh, it's Friday afternoon, evening for me, so I feel like I'm slowly losing it. But all is good because we've got this fantastic workshop. If you're ready to share your screen, feel free to do so, and we can get started right away.
Awesome. All right, so I think we can get started, right, Angela?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, feel free to get started.
All right, well, hey everyone, great to meet you virtually. Welcome to Magic's workshop on one-click DIDs and onboarding users' digital identity. My name is Srinjoy. I'm based out of Vancouver, Canada. Very excited to have all of you here. So Magic offers an enterprise-grade platform that helps both businesses and developers unleash the potential of Web3 with as little integration challenges as possible. So we'll offer things like authentication, wallets, wallet infrastructure, NFTs, and a lot more. We've had over 130K developers worldwide embrace us, and we hope that some of you will as well. I'm a product manager at Magic, so I get to work closely with our blockchain and developer experience teams to get work done on our SDK, our docs, and I'll be walking you through the presentation today. So in the workshop, we're going to show you how to use Magic Wallets to generate keys and identifiers that can be used with the Onyx SSI SDK. But before we do that, we wanted to kind of walk through the current landscape of wallets, how they serve digital identity, and where Magic's products can fit in. We'll cover some high-level potential use cases and then also dive into some sample code to help you get started. I'd love for this to be somewhat interactive, and so if you guys have any questions and things like that, as I'm speaking through the slides, please feel free to post them. I'll look over and periodically check the chat to see if there's any there. But of course, there'll be a bunch of time at the end for questions as well, so feel free to ask now or save it for later. All right. So when you look at the stack of technologies that are really needed to support a large-scale DID networks, the middle layers, layer 3 in this diagram that you see, often has the most risk and the adoption barriers because it's the main authentication layer for all of the other layers to work correctly. So if you work with other authentication systems, you might know that not every service has its own authentication. You often trust other services to provide that authentication, and then you trust that that is accurate and has integrity to what they're claiming. So in the Web3 space, that role has been taken on by the wallet. And so we start to ask the questions of, how do you safely and securely create new wallets, and how do users authenticate and access their wallets? And finally, how do those things work together to interact with the blockchain securely? So those are some of the things that we're going to be looking into and the solutions that are sort of on the market right now. So the first one I think should be pretty familiar to a lot of people. Obviously, one of the most widely used solutions is self-custody wallets, MetaMask, Rainbow wallets, Trust wallets of the sort. And while they're great for power users, they can be really burdensome for new users. So as you can see here, there's over 12 steps, takes a very long time. And out of those steps, there's this ever important one where they give you your recovery phrase, and you're expected to treat that really safely, securely, note it down, and hope that no one steals it, no one takes it, and you don't lose it. And if you fail to do it correctly, you're risking your assets. And in some cases, if you're tying digital identity to the wallet, you might get your identity stolen as well. So ultimately, I think what we want to do in this industry is try to aim for other abstracted solutions that's going to make it easier for users to be able to get started and have those abstractions built in so that they're just risk adverse and secure to begin with, rather than expecting users to just figure it out. So we look at one of the solutions to this is multi-party compute. So many of you might have already used a similar wallet like this where you have a social login. And this is probably one of the more widely technical solutions out there that is distributed and still maintains all of its integrity while offering that UX. But unfortunately, MPC, multi-party compute, it suffers from a different bottleneck. And that bottleneck comes to scalability and performance. So there's this inherent trade-off where with MPC, the more nodes you have, the longer time it's going to take to perform key operations like generating a wallet or signing something. And with fewer nodes, you get faster, but then you're sort of faced with the same centralization risk as if you weren't really using many nodes at all. And finally, there's so many different MPC standards out there. So while MPC itself of like using different nodes to key share and compute keys and signatures is widely known, every wallet does it a little bit differently, and they have different patterns and protocols they use. So it's very hard from an end user perspective to really assess like what type of security and how secure and how decentralized of a solution that you're really getting. And then the last one, probably with the best UX, is our licensed custodial wallets. So these are things that you'll see on exchanges like Binance and Coinbase. And these are probably the top of the line because it gives the developer the full control of being able to perform blockchain operations whenever they'd like. And this involves the user giving custodianship to these vendors and basically saying that they trust them, they're good with them storing their assets and interacting on behalf of them. So obviously this is good UX, but the user has very limited control and they can have a very difficult time, recovering funds if something were to ever go wrong. So in this case, what good custodians are going to do is that they're going to collect a bunch of information from the user up front. So they'll typically go through like a KYC process, know your customer, where some of you might have done this before, where you have to hold up a picture of your ID beside your face, and you have to let them verify your identity before you're even allowed to create an account. So what they have really done here is kind of shifted the burden up front to when the account is created for greater ease of use later. While this can work for things like exchanges, when you start doing this for things like NFT sales or a lot more simple projects where you're not necessarily storing thousands of dollars, that can really detract away or discourage a lot of people from participating in the first place. Who wants to provide their ID just to buy an NFT, right? So those are some of the solutions out there today, and that's really where Magic comes in. So Magic provides a developer SDK that creates Web3 wallets with a Web2 login to really optimize for user adoption and conversion. It starts with, and this is just an example, but it starts with picking like a passwordless login of your choice. So email OTP is the most popular, where the user is sent a code to their email, verifies their login, and then a wallet's created safely for them in the background, and they can have access to a whole host of other additional features that we'll walk through. So as simple as that, the previous slide kind of showed it is for users, it's just as comprehensive for business and developers. And we sort of look at it in 4 pillars. So first one, we'll start on like the top left, is our key management. We have over 11 million wallets created. We're one of the most scalable wallets out there. We can go up to 2,000 wallets a second, and that can become really important when you consider getting a bunch of people to do something at once. And often NFT drops, gaming, and things like that all do require kind of similar types of Web2 scale that's other wallets sometimes have a difficult time delivering. It's fully, and our key management is fully non-custodial and patented technology that we're going to get into how that works. But that non-custodial nature gives us a lot of benefits for security and financial risk as well. So for security, we have all the certifications you'd expect for an authentication company. So how we regulate the data, what internal controls we have in place, how often we're testing. All of this is done very regularly at Magic to make sure that our products stay secure. And lastly, because we're non-custodial, you don't need to go get a license or a business license or be at risk of holding your user's assets. The user will be in control the entire time, and wallets will be 100% exportable. The question is the company based in Canada? No, I am one of the 2 employees based out of Canada. The company is mostly based in the US, but it's remote. So I'd say Seattle, San Francisco, New York are sort of like the more bigger groupings, but yeah, US company. Cool. So let's talk about how all of this works. So we have our patented decentralized key management system, and I know it might look a little bit complicated, but I'll try my best to simplify what goes on here. We'll start on the client. So on the left-hand side, where you see the browser. So as a client loads a dApp utilizing Magic and they attempt to sign in, Magic is going to load an iframe in a secure environment with the browser for the user to submit their credentials. Magic is going to verify those credentials, and then we're going to be able to create a create a key on a hardware secure module in AWS and using KMS and AWS Cognito for those that might be interested. But using those third-party secure modules, we arbitrarily load it onto one of them. So at this point, Magic has no idea where the key lives. It also has never seen the key throughout that key generation process. And so that's how the wallet's created. Now, when we go on to signing, there's a secure communication that occurs between the client and their hardware secured module, so their own keys. So it goes directly from the client on the browser, where the user is able to change or trade their credentials for an AWS access token. And that access token allows them to directly communicate with AWS to produce signatures for their keys. So that's how Magic at no point has access to the environment or the keys, and the user stays in control the whole time. And obviously, this is a very simplified view, but on our docs, we go into a lot more extensive detail about how DKMS works. So you can check that out after the presentation. We come in 2 flavors. We come in dedicated wallet, so that's our white labeled authentication and wallet feature. So you're able to customize the entire UX of the wallet experience. And it also comes with the most support for different types of blockchains you want to use, different auth methods you want to use, and a bunch of other stuff. I'll stop there for a sec for questions. Does this require AWS Cognito, or is it an option? It does not. So AWS Cognito is just simply what Magic is using to keep us secure, and how the user is going to interact with their with their like already initialized AWS instance. But all that's in the background and happening in the SDK. So you as a developer don't need to worry about it.
Srinjoy, also, there is a question in the questions tab as well.
Oh, okay. Isn't the use of Web2 login to access Web3 simply a centralized application accessing a decentralized application? It appears my access can be controlled, monitored, or prevented. Yeah, so there's a lot of definitions around exactly how these things will work, but the key use case that we're trying to solve is like onboarding users. So we're not saying that all other wallets don't necessarily have a purpose. I think you can think of it like a graduation path. So when users first come on, they're going to want to use something simple. There's nothing in that wallet. They'll get their first NFT. And after that, if they choose to want to move on to a different wallet, they always have the ability to export their keys, and then they can move on and control their wallet through anything else they want. So what Magic is trying to do is sort of bridge that gap, as well as introduce other solutions that make it a lot less centralized than other custodial wallets would be. So hopefully that makes sense, but I can also come back to that at the end there. All right, so last solution here is the universal wallet. So the universal wallet is our plug and play embedded wallet with everything built in. So if you want to have UI and full like management controls for the user, like buying, sending, receiving with fiat on-ramps and all that, you might want to pick this one. So this comes with all of those things already built into the UI. Cool. I think I see one more question, which is, so this is more of a social login application. No, it connects your social logins to your keys. So if I had to describe Magic, Magic is very based on key management and tying key management to social or other ways of authenticating. So you can imagine it's not necessarily just for social login; it's for any auth method and connecting that to your private keys. All right. So to getting into the fun part is, how do we use the Magic SDK for decentralized identifiers? So before we get into the code, I just wanted to kind of walk through some use cases that you guys could consider for your projects, as well as just kind of thinking broadly about what's possible here. So the first one is bridging legacy institutional systems. So what we've seen a lot of in Magic is when we work with big brands, we've done so with like Macy's and 7-Eleven and Mattel. A lot of them already have really big user bases with their own identity systems that they want to provide Web3 functionality to without necessarily replacing it. And that's because they don't necessarily want their users to go try creating an account or have an ability to lose what's given to them in their wallet. They really want something that's going to make it easy for their existing users and existing systems to be able to offer that functionality without necessarily causing a ton of disruption. So you can imagine with an email-based wallet that can also serve for self-sovereign identity purposes, you can start linking these users that are using these institutional systems to Web3 technologies a lot easier and get them onboarded. The second one is cross-program portability for loyalty programs. So this one's interesting because you see a lot of fragmentation that ultimately negatively affects both the retailer and the end user for these types of loyalty programs. If you guys have loyalty cards, you might know there's like zero transparency into point inflation. So one day your point is worth $2, and the next day it's worth 50 cents. It's ultimately all very controlled by the point program itself, and you can't really know what's happening until they announce it. Most of the third parties and brokers control the ability to exchange points, and retailers can struggle to identify and meaningfully reach out to these loyalty users. So with a wallet that allows people to reach out maybe via an NFT holder, so if you're a holder of a particular type of NFT, you could receive a certain message in your wallet. To many other use cases, we can make it easier for people to have joint partnerships and people to access many more different loyalty programs than they do today. So an example of this was before I was working at Magic, I was working at Dapper Labs at Flow, and that team had created CryptoKitties. If you guys remember the way back in the day in 2017, 2018, CryptoKitties was one of the biggest first NFT applications out there. And what was interesting about that was there was a lot of different spin-offs from that original CryptoKitties contract that happened. One of the most popular ones was Kitty Items. So Kitty Items was a project that never talked to CryptoKitties. They just simply built another contract that relied on the original CryptoKitties contract to provide items for like hats and accessories that you can put on your CryptoKitty image itself. And so without ever talking to the business, without ever doing any of that, they launched a product and leveraged the CryptoKitty brand to build a pretty successful business. And not only did it benefit them, but it actually benefited CryptoKitties as well, because there was so much more engagement they were getting with their product as a result of people wanting to accessorize their cats. So similar to that, you can think about all of the joint partnership programs that different people can do. And an example of that is the third point here, which is, if you want to bring it to the real world, how can people now participate with different events going on? So you envision a scenario where, you go into a coffee shop and there's a Taylor Swift concert going on, so the coffee shop wants to offer some discount to the Taylor Swift goers. Right now, they do this with like for games and stuff. It'll be like if you're wearing a jersey or you show your ticket, but really there's no way to verify legitimacy for them. They're just trying to tap into some of the traffic that's come into their city. But with an ability to have some of this on chain, they can now easily do that verification and be able to tap into all of that demand as well. So imagine getting a 5% discount on your coffee because you're going to the Taylor Swift concert. That's going to benefit kind of both ends. So hopefully that provokes some thought, but those are just some of the things that are of interest to Magic as we look into the future. Okay, now time for the code. Don't feel like you have to follow along here too much. There's going to be a template that you'll get right out of this command. So we're just going to dive into some of the key code snippets and what you might want to modify and how to start thinking about the code. But you'll have access to all of this after the presentation as well. Okay, with that being said, the first step is we've got this nice CLI tool that you can use to start scaffolding a Magic app. So if you just run npx make magic, assuming you have npx installed, it's going to start popping up with a few prompts, and those prompts will help you get started with your project. Obviously, feel free to play around with it, but for this example, we're going to go through kind of the more simple case and walk through what that looks like. So if you're following along, select dedicated wallet, email OTP, and then when you're prompted for an API key, you can go to the developer dashboard. There should be a link that pops up there and grab an API key. It might also ask you your blockchain network. I would probably pick an EVM like Polygon or Ethereum for now, since that will likely work better with the existing Onyx SSI SDK. But obviously later on you can experiment with a lot of the other networks that are offered as well. All right, so once you have you've ran that command, you'll see a folder with a bunch of stuff in it. It should also just be running a application on localhost 3000. So if you want to pop that up, you'll see some content there right away. But I wanted to go into some of the key places you can start looking at the code. So the first one is going to be in the Magic provider instance. So this is where Magic gets initialized, and you get to define what network you want to connect to, as well as put in your API key. If you followed all the prompts, this should be pretty much filled in for you. But let's say you're using like a custom Alchemy node or in some Infura node, basically a URL that you didn't see in the options. You could go in here and modify that to get that to work. And then for the second piece that's shown in the slide here, where it shows the email OTP code. So that one line is sort of where, no pun intended, the magic happens, where the magic.auth.login with email OTP just takes an email, and then it will perform the entire flow that's needed for the user to authenticate. So the user, including like inputting the code and their OTP code into the UI and all that. So all of that's handled, and once they're done, you'll receive back their account information. And then for step 3, want to call out how to get some more information about the user. So for the user that just logged in, you're able to call this get metadata function. And from that get metadata function, you'll receive a bunch of user info. In the current toast message, so if you just go onto the application as is and you press that button, it's going to show you just the public address of the user. But if you wanted to get the proper DID format with like the DID : ether in front of it, you can change that to userinfo.issuer, and that will show you the complete DID format for the user that just logged in. And then step 4, so in the previous step in step 3, we just saw how to get on the client side, what is the public address of the user. But if you wanted to do something like issue a credential for that user, and you have to do that on the back end, you don't necessarily want to just trust anything coming from the client. So the way we can do this is using our admin SDK on the server, and then pretty much the same kind of flow on the client where instead of just logging in, we're also going to ask the Magic SDK to generate an ID token. And that ID token is going to be signed with the user's private keys, as well as it could also be signed over a server secret that you have. And basically what this allows is that when you send over this encoded information to your server, you don't have to necessarily just trust the client that they are who they say they are, but you can verify and decode that token to provably get their public address. And so now at this point, you would have a direct link on the back end between the user's email and their public address. And then the last step is where the Onyx SSI SDK comes in. So I didn't go into obviously too much detail here, but just knowing that now that you have the holder's data information, you as the backend or your resource server can now issue a credential to that user however you want. So I think in the example right now, it just stores it to a file. But obviously you can expand that to thinking you can issue the user an NFT. You could just store it in your database for verification later. But yeah, there's a lot of different ways you can go about it now that you have that information from the user on your backend. All right, so I think that's pretty much it for the crux of the workshop. We have a bunch of resources, and all of the code that I just talked about is going to be available through that template. But yeah, happy to take any questions, comments, concerns, anything like that.
Great. I think there is a question in the questions tab from Ben again. So,
what security measures are in place if my private key gets stolen? So there's a lot of security measures in place to make sure that can't happen in the first place. So maybe if you're wondering about that, there's a whole host of things. So first is where all of the keys that are used are stored securely in that client-side iframe environment. Plus, there's a bunch of authentication features like sync phishing. So if we notice like someone trying to log in from a location they haven't before or a device they haven't before, all of that is tracked and make sure that that doesn't happen. So yeah, I would encourage you guys to look into the security section on our docs page. It's going to be able to go into far more detail than I will be. When do you require KYC? So since we're non-custodial, we do not require KYC. Unless the developer is like explicitly doing something that they might need KYC for. As far as just using Magic, the user is never going to need to KYC.
Okay, great. Oh, here we go. Some more questions.
Cool. Can a user log in with multiple methods, email and Google? So on the public version of the SDK, you can log in with multiple methods, but each method gets tied to a different wallet address. So we have a solution for that called account linking, like where you can link multiple like auth methods that belong to the same user together. But that's sort of an enterprise feature we don't have publicly available yet. So it's possible, but for now, what you guys will likely face is you'll want to use the same method. But that being said, different users can choose different methods. So it's not like if you do Google login that every user has to use Google login. You can offer email plus Google plus SMS, and any of those users can choose from. It's just that if that same user tries to use a different one, they will get a different wallet address. So hopefully that makes sense. Next one is, how do we get access to private keys after logging in with Magic? Great question. So there's a couple of ways to get access to that as the end user. So in the end user, there's a settings page inside of the wallet UI panel that lets you go to a key export page. So that key export page, once you authenticate there, is going to give you back your reveal, like your secret phrase, or directly your private key. So that's an always on live server. So at any point, an end user that wants to export can just head out there independent of the developer. If I could a phishing site fake stuff, fake the private key comms in the iframe? So no. Well, so yeah, no, because you on the dashboard settings, you have to go and configure your domain allow list. So just kind of like similar to like how whitelisting would work, you can specify which URLs are allowed to communicate using that API key. So you can prevent phishing through things like that. The next question is, if I export my wallet keys, will you keep them? No. So once you are exported out of the system, you can continue to log in, but I guess keep is the interesting word. They will remain intact on the HSM, but they are no longer linked to an account if that account has been exported. If that makes sense. So if you're always able to export your key and utilize it, continue to use it in MetaMask, and then continue to use it at Magic. But once you're out, there's no way the developer or Magic can get access to that key. Can I send funds to the email generated account and use it as a classic wallet? Get a gasless NFT and then sell it. Can I send funds to the email? Yes. Yeah. So you like it is basically a classic wallet. It's just a matter of how your users are going to see it. So yeah, what you just mentioned is actually the experience on our homepage. So if you just go like magic.link, there's like a mint NFT button. That's basically what we're doing. So someone can log in, mint an NFT, we pay for the gas, send it to them, so they can see it right away and start using it, and including selling it if they want.
Awesome. I think those are all of the questions in so far. We got through all of those quite quickly, but really great questions, everyone. Okay, well, Jamari is typing. I'll give you maybe a quick minute or two. Oh no, no questions. Just saying what an excellent presentation is. I mean, yeah, really interesting, and I mean, it seems like everyone has understood all that you were trying to explain, and looks pretty good. So I will likely start to wrap up early, just so we can give you your time back. And I'm sure if any of our hackers have any other questions, they can reach out to you. What is the best way for them to get in touch? Are you on our server / am I relaying questions to you?
Yeah, no, that makes sense. So Discord, I'm on Discord, so you can reach out to me there, and I'll periodically check the Magic Zone, I believe, for questions.
Yes.
I guess the last thing I didn't fully get into was our bounties. So yeah, we do have $5,000 in bounties. So we're offering it for the best consumer-facing application that uses digital identity. So if you're utilizing the Magic SDK and you feel like your application is more consumer facing, please apply to our thing, and we'll definitely want to review your apps. We have a bunch of runner-up prizes as well. So even if you don't win, there's a couple of smaller ones that you can take away.
Yeah, that sounds really awesome. Okay, well, if everyone is all right with me ending early, please drop a quick emoji in the chat if you're still there and are happy with the presentation and everything, just so we know that you're still there with us. Otherwise, yeah, thank you all so much for coming. Thank you so much, Srinjoy, for coming and speaking. Fantastic, you're all there. Great. And yeah, it was a really, really enjoyable presentation. Awesome. Have a wonderful rest of the day, everyone. And I guess we'll see you next week.
All right. Thanks all.